Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kalela Perot, and I'll be your moderator this afternoon for today's significant rain and flooding media availability. Joining us today, we have the Honorable Tim Houston, Premier of Nova Scotia, His Worship Mike Savage, Mayor of the Halifax Regional Municipality, Her Worship Carolyn Bolivar-Getson, Municipality of the District of Lunenburg, Mark Peachy, Chief Engineer with the Nova Scotia Department of Public Works, Kelly Ash, Emergency Management Coordinator with Municipality of East Hants, David Pickles, Chief Operating Officer, Scotia Power, Chief Superintendent Sue Black, Criminal Operations Officer with Nova Scotia RCMP, Paul Mason, Executive Director, Nova Scotia Emergency Management Office, Erica Fleck, Director of Emergency Management and Community Safety with the HRM, and Mark Phillips, Chief Administrative Officer with the West Hants Regional Municipality. Several of our participants this afternoon do have opening remarks, and we will begin with Premier Tim Houston. Premier, if you'd like to get started.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Good afternoon, everyone. We have a scary, significant situation here in the province. We had significant rainfall overnight causing extensive flooding and damage. As a result, we've declared a state of emergency in the following areas: Halifax Regional Municipality, East Hants, West Hants, Lunenburg, and Queens. The state of emergency allows us to respond quickly when there are calls for more resources. There are a number of tragic situations, but we have confirmed reports from the RCMP of 4 missing people out of 2 separate incidents. Both of them were in West Hants. 2 children are unaccounted for following an incident where the vehicle they were traveling in was submerged. There were 5 occupants in the vehicle. 3 escaped. The search is ongoing for these 2 children. In a separate incident, a youth and another man are unaccounted for after the vehicle that they were traveling in was submerged. 2 of the 4 people in the vehicle were rescued. The search is ongoing for these two people. So in total, searches continue for 4 people. Out of respect for the families, the RCMP is not releasing any names at this time. And I know it's in our nature to spring into action and help, but sadly, now is not the time. RCMP are asking people in the area not to leave their homes in an effort to help search for those missing. This is because the ongoing conditions are dangerous. I cannot stop thinking about these families and these 4 individuals, and I want them to know that everything that can be done is being done. I know the entire province joins me in praying for their safe return. If you're having trouble making contact with a friend or a loved one, or have reason to believe that they may be missing, please reach out to your local authorities. I mentioned the state of emergency, but I'd like to share some further information about what's actually happening on the ground, the efforts of the local first responders, government and officials, municipal and otherwise across the province. The Provincial Coordination Centre was activated last night, and we've been assisting municipalities overnight and throughout the day. We've been working with the federal government, who has provided us with help via the Coast Guard and other search and rescue capabilities, as we tried to make sure we knew where everyone was at, overnight and into this morning. Teams from Public Works, Natural Resources, and many other departments across the province have been working throughout the night and of course all through today as well. The list of infrastructure damage to bridges, roads, and other buildings, it's long, and it will continue to grow. It does include bridges. We lost a number of bridges, and a number of other bridges are compromised. It includes damage to 100 series highways on the 103. It includes local roads and obviously significant property damage for many homeowners. Public Works will speak more to this a little bit later on. But as always, I have to say our first responders are second to none. They've been using boats to rescue people who are in scary situations, and in many cases putting themselves in harm's way. They are incredible people. Their commitment to their friends and neighbors is remarkable. Thank you for the work that you are doing for our communities. Over the just less than a 24-hour period, we received 250 milliliters of rain. Just to put that into perspective, we would usually receive that much rain over a 3-month period. We got 3 months worth of rain in less than 24 hours. It came fast and it came furious, and it's left a mark in many ways. The forecast will see some easing of the rain in central and western and even southern Nova Scotia this evening, but it will still take a few days for the water that's already fallen to settle out. The water continues to move around, so over the next couple of days we'll still see more impacts from the rain we've had. Northern and eastern Nova Scotia will see more rain tonight. The forecasts are projecting less rain for them than we've had in HRM and Hants and Lunenburg and Queens, but we're paying very close attention to that. For anyone in the impacted areas, please use your common sense when leaving your home. If you're in a safe place, now is the time to stay in that safe place. Just for a little guidance, if you live in downtown Halifax and you want to go to the grocery store, that's probably okay. But if you live in Sackville and your road's washed out, probably not. Just stay where you're at. If you're safe, stay home. Listen to local police and pay attention to any emergency alerts. Keep an eye out for your friends and neighbors and any vulnerable people. I want to close by again just extending my prayers for the safe return of those that are missing. The search continues for 4 loved ones, and good people are working hard to find them, and we pray for their safe return. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. Next, we're going to go to Mark Peachy with the Department of Public Works. Mark, would you like to share a few remarks to start? Okay, we'll move along. We're going to go to Mayor Mike Savage.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Once again, we're back at our Emergency Operations Center. I'm joined today by the Director of Emergency Management, Erica Fleck, as well as the Chief of the Halifax Regional Fire and Emergency, Ken Stubing. We have had biblical proportions of rain over the night and into the day. In some places within HRM, we had close to 300 millimeters of rain. And as the Premier indicated, that far exceeds the average monthly total, which would be in the range of 90 to 95 millimeters. There's much damage to infrastructure, and it will take us some time to figure it out. Our fire and emergency folks have been busy all through this period. RCMP, Halifax Fire, and other first responders. Our works department have begun to go out and try to assess some of this damage. It's obviously not possible in all cases with the amount of water, but they have been doing that, and they have been doing some repairs as possible. But this is going to take some time. This is not something that's going to be fixed this weekend. And we're going to have to prioritize, and we're going to have to make sure that we get the work done in an orderly manner. So once again, our community is facing the awful force and unpredictability of nature and a changing climate. And again, we're asking residents to persevere, to help their neighbors, to be patient while emergency responders get to neighborhoods. We're really asking people to stay at home if it's at all possible. We also are asking people to stay away from running water or collected water, to stay away from rivers, to stay away from brooks. Not only is it dangerous, is the force of the water dangerous, but it's quite frankly yucky. There is stuff in that water that you don't want your kids playing in. So please be careful about allowing anybody to go near that water. It may look like something that's fun to play in. I can assure you it is not. We had 2 evacuation centers, one in Beaverbank, one in East Dartmouth. The one in Beaverbank is shutting down at 4 o'clock. There wasn't as much enough demand for that. We are keeping East Dartmouth Community Center open with the help of the Red Cross. And that evacuation center has got a generator in case there are power outages. We'll be apprising of municipal services in the days to come, things like solid waste. You can keep track on transit on the HFX Transit Twitter. We want to thank all the first responders who have been out there. The Chief Stubing's folks have been out all throughout this. We have some real heroes in our community. The GSAR ground search and rescue teams are amazing. The joint emergency management teams, these folks are getting to people and potentially saving lives, certainly making lives better. Please stay at home so these folks can do their amazing work, which is so important. Again, we ask you to stay away from running water. This has been an extraordinary event, and I know that it follows on the heels of the wildfires of not very long ago and even Hurricane Fiona of last fall. The only way to deal with this is to work together and to allow the people right now to do the work that they need to do. I also want to indicate the thoughts of myself, all of my council members, and I know everybody in HRM as we think about those who are unaccounted for right now. Our thoughts and our prayers are with them, and we know that the right people are out trying to find them and to assist them. I'm deeply grateful to people who are working hard, and we will continue to make sure that we do that work. Please be patient, stay safe, stay home, stay away from the water, and we will get through this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. We're now going to Mark Peachy with the Department of Public Works.
Good afternoon, everyone. Staff with the Department of Public Works have been working to keep Nova Scotia safe since late last night. That includes Deputy Minister Peter Hackett and the Honourable Kim Maslin, who have been out touring the damaged sites today. We are pulling resources from areas with less damage to areas that have been more severely damaged. We are seeing extensive damage across our provincial infrastructure, such as roads, shoulders, highways, and bridges. We won't have a full assessment of the damage until the floodwaters recede. Some things we should be able to fix over the next few days. In other cases, it will take a bit longer. Crews will remain in place for the safety of the motoring public until this is finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next, we have Mayor Carolyn Bolivar-Getson.
Thank you and good afternoon. We are dealing with a storm that we have never experienced in our area in a lifetime. We had 200 to 300 millimeters of rain that fell here over a very short period of time. We're dealing with road closures and evacuation measures. Our main focus is on keeping our residents safe and providing them with assistance that they need to do that. The Public Service Commission evaluated the Hebbs Lake Dam, which is responsible for the town water supply. To ease the threat of breach, 2 logs were removed from the dam, which is in place to control the level of Hebbs Lake. They are monitoring that very closely to make sure that no further logs will have to be removed. Also, MODL Council today at 12:15, due to the threat of flooding from the Hebbs Lake area, 2 Fancy Lake residents in the Petite area did issue an immediate and mandatory evacuation of 435 residences. The alert was sent out to the province, notice distributed through media and online media avenues was completed. When we look at this localized flooding in the Fancy Lake area, it's severe, and we need to make sure that our residents are safe. So the main concern is for life right now, although some of the roads are on higher grounds. We have had washouts on our roads, and I know that Public Works are addressing those. There is a lot of flooding damage in our area. Ground search and rescue and the RCMP are currently going door to door to evacuate residents. Residents are being asked to either shelter with friends or to go to the Comfort Center at the Lunenburg County Lifestyle Center. That will be opened, and from there, if people need overnight accommodations, they will be able to go to the Nova Scotia Community College, and Red Cross will be there to make sure that that is set up for them. We continue to work with all of the emergency personnel, with the Public Service Commission, the RCMP, the provincial departments, Red Cross, and continue to monitor the lake levels on an hourly basis. So we also would like to extend and pray for the safe return of those 4 missing people. Council has been very active in this scenario, and thanks to all of our first responders who are out there on the ground helping residents get to safe areas.
Thank you, Mayor. We're now going to Kelly Ash, who is the Emergency Management Coordinator with the Municipality of East Hants.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I'm providing this briefing on behalf of East Hants and in consultation with our warden, Eleanor Rolston, and our CAO, Kim Ramsey. 2 campgrounds were evacuated this morning, Renfrew Campground and Riverland Campground in 9 Mile River. We wanted to give a huge thank you to the local fire departments and our East Hants ground search and rescue members that assisted in that effort. We had 61 evacuees that were registered at the Upper 9 Mile River Community Hall. All those evacuees have left the hall now and have made alternate arrangements for housing, and this facility has been deactivated. Several homes in South Maitland were evacuated due to a road washout, and residents have found alternate arrangements for housing at this time as well. We are working with the province for a bridge collapse on North Salem Road in Mill Village that's left participants stranded at the Atlantic Motorsports Parkway. We've been in contact with the organizer, and there are about several hundred people there that are sheltering on site, and they're self-sufficient at this time. We have multiple provincial roads that are washed out, and we're working with our partners to have those addressed. We have one municipal road that has washed out, and that's Bell Court and 9 Mile River that we're addressing. Our staff are working around the clock on water and wastewater checks, and we have significant flooding at our East Hants Aquatic Center that we're working on having assessed, but we do anticipate substantial damage to our mechanical equipment at the aquatic facility. Our Waste Management Center has a road washout, but we are anticipating that we'll be able to repair that in-house. Several residents are reporting floodings in their home. We are directing them to call their insurance company, and we anticipate that friends and neighbors can support those who need help with showers and laundry at this time. If longer-term support is needed, we will direct them to contact the Red Cross. And then we also have some active calls for issues with backups that are coming in, and we're responding to those as we're able. And that's all I have from East Hants. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Next, we're going to David Pickles with Nova Scotia Power. David?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Crews are busy restoring power across the province today following the significant lightning storm that we experienced last night and is continuing on through this afternoon. The heavy rains have made restoration efforts challenging as some roads and highways have been flooded or washed out. At peak, we had approximately 80,000 customers who lost power due to the lightning strikes, and we've actually restored approximately 90% of that. We have under 7,000 customers remaining to be restored. We have approximately 400 people on the ground working to restore power. This includes Nova Scotia Power crews, local contractors, crews from New Brunswick, and many more employees behind the scenes supporting restoration efforts. And we do expect to be able to restore power to the majority of customers currently without power by late this evening. But for some customers in the harder to reach areas impacted by flooding, it may be into tomorrow before we're able to get their power back on. We are working closely with our partners at the provincial EMO to coordinate outage response efforts. And I just want to say thank you to all our partners who have been assisting with this challenging event. We've been monitoring this weather system since yesterday and officially opened our operations center 5 a.m. this morning. And as well, our thoughts and prayers are going to the families that are missing and those that are assisting with emergency response. And I just want to briefly give an update on our hydro system. We've experienced unprecedented rain, as noted, up to 300 millimeters over the past 24 hours. We did see water levels rise significantly across 4 of our mainland hydro systems, and our hydro team's been in the field monitoring and managing the issues very closely. The 4 river systems of concern are the Mersey, St. Margaret's Bay, Fall River, and the Avon River system. We are coordinating with both local and provincial EMO partners to ensure the safety of surrounding homes and communities. We did proactively issue evacuation preparation notices to residents on the lower section of the Mersey and the Avon River system. Conditions have improved slightly over the afternoon, which is encouraging, and we were able to lift our emergency preparedness plan on a middle section of the Mersey, but we continue to monitor closely as conditions can change pretty quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We're now going to move on to Chief Superintendent Sue Black with the Nova Scotia RCMP.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for allowing me a few minutes to provide an update on our response to the floods. My remarks, if that's okay, will be delivered in English and then in French. Last night and in the early morning hours, our officers assisted our partners to rescue stranded motorists in many areas, including Sackville, Lunenburg County, and West Hants, and support our partners with evacuating people living in the St. Croix River system in the West Hants area of Hants County. As the Premier mentioned, we have reports of 4 missing people from the West Hants area. Our officers are working side by side with search and rescue teams from West Hants Valley and Halifax, and our thoughts and prayers are with the families of those missing. We have no further reports of missing people or of any injuries at this time. We are, however, continuing to receive reports of stranded people relating to flooding conditions. Our officers, along with our partners and our Operational Communications Center, continue to be fully engaged in supporting these efforts. And I'd like to commend all of our employees, especially our officers on the front line and our OCC operators, for their tremendous and continuing efforts over the last 24 hours, as well as our other partners, first responding partners. Je suis la surintendante principale Sue Black, officier responsable des enquêtes criminelles de la GRC ici en Nouvelle-Écosse. Je vous remercie de m'accorder quelques minutes pour faire le point sur notre réponse aux inondations. La nuit dernière et dans les premières heures de ce matin, nos agents ont aidé nos partenaires à secourir des automobilistes échoués dans de nombreuses régions, notamment à Sackville, dans le comté de Lunenburg et à West Hants. Ils ont également aidé nos partenaires à évacuer des personnes de leur résidence le long du réseau hydrographique de la rivière Sainte-Croix dans la région de West Hants, dans le comté de Hants. Comme l'a mentionné le Premier ministre, 4 personnes sont disparues dans la région de West Hants. Entre eux, 2 enfants disparus à la suite d'un incident au cours duquel le véhicule dans lequel ils se trouvaient a été submergé. Une jeune personne et un autre homme sont également disparus après que le véhicule dans lequel ils se trouvaient a été submergé. Nos officiers travaillent côte à côte avec les équipes de recherche et de sauvetage de West Hants Valley et Halifax, et nos prières et pensées sont avec les familles des gens disparus. Par respect pour les familles, nous ne divulguerons pas leur identité ni aucune autre information personnelle pour le moment. Nous demandons au public de ne pas quitter leur domicile pour les rechercher car les conditions actuelles sont très dangereuses. Nous n'avons pas d'autres rapports de personnes disparues ou de blessés pour le moment. Nous continuons cependant à recevoir des rapports de personnes bloquées ou échouées en raison des inondations. Nos officiers et nos partenaires et notre station de télécommunication opérationnelle continuent de s'engager pleinement dans ces efforts. Je tiens à remercier tous nos employés, en particulier nos agents en première ligne et les opérateurs de notre STO pour les efforts considérables qu'ils ont déployés au cours des dernières 24 heures. Et je tiens aussi à remercier nos partenaires en premiers répondants. Merci.
Thank you. We are now going to open the floor to questions from media. We're going to follow our 1 question, 1 follow-up format. So we are going to get to as many reporters as we can with the time that we have. And when I do call your name, please identify who your question is for. So getting started, we are going to go to Stephen Wenzel with CTV. Go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you. So Premier, I guess my question is probably for the Premier and for Erica Fleck. On Friday evening, people dealt with flooding in their homes. In some cases, residents were forced to evacuate. But those who are unhoused were left to their own devices to sleep in tents in the hopes that floodwaters wouldn't wash them away. We have warming and cooling centers to address extreme heat and freezing temperatures. What mechanism does the province have to protect not just those who lost their homes in the flood, but also those who navigated this devastating storm without the protection of shelter? And why wasn't that mechanism implemented last night?
Thank you for the question. Of course, these types of situations come on pretty quick. I mean, we had significant rainfall in less than 24 hours. So I think, to answer your question, there would be comfort centers that were set up. The mayor referred to a couple that were set up in HRM. I know in other parts of the province there are comfort centers set up for people as well. So those are there for those people who need a place of safety when they don't otherwise have one. So the comfort centers, they were stood up pretty quick. The storm was pretty significant rainfall in a short period of time, and I think the response for those comfort centers to set those up was pretty quick, and they're there for people to stay safe, and those will be there for everyone who needs it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the question. I would like to add from an HRM perspective, we did work with the province very early last evening for those experiencing homelessness. And we didn't coordinate to get those at the highest risk in the Bedford-Sackville areas into shelters last night. And then the province in coordination with a contracted service provider did open up additional beds in the Halifax area that teams were searching and checking on people that we did bring them to for those who were at risk.
Thank you. Stephen, do you have a follow-up question?
Sure. Mayor Savage said in his opening remarks, he referred to this as, an event related to a changing climate. There was no mention of climate change in Premier Houston's opening remarks. I'm just wondering what his thoughts are about the connection between the extreme weather events we've seen in the last year in Nova Scotia and the connection with climate change.
Thank you for that important question, Stephen. Our climate is changing. It's obvious around us.
Thank you, Premier. Next, we're going to go to Jane Spanangle with CBC Nova Scotia.
Hi, thank you. It's Jane Spanangle. I just was wondering with the search for the 4 missing people, can you let us know how many resources, what search groups are involved in the search for the 4 missing people?
Thank you. I can start, and then maybe I can ask the RCMP to join in. But I think, the first responder network we have across the province are firefighters, volunteer firefighters, paid firefighters, our search and rescue teams, local law enforcement. I mean, in times like this, we've seen time and time again how quickly they mobilize, how dedicated they are. I have nothing but praise for our first responder network across the province, and I know they've been activated certainly overnight, completely mobilized, rescuing people, evacuating people, and certainly in this search, this is every possible resource is been mobilized on these searches. The caveat being, of course, we're asking that people not spring into action as their nature might suggest and otherwise want them to do. Nova Scotians like to help. They like to be there for their friends and their communities, but this is not the time. So for those who may be sitting at home and wanting to go and aid in the search, this is not the time. Conditions are too dangerous. But what I would say to those families and to their loved ones, the effort to find and have a safe return for those 4 Nova Scotians we're putting everything at that we can.
And do you have a follow-up question, Jane?
I do. The search we heard started early this morning, so I'm assuming we're about 12 hours into the search. Is there a time when the search would be called off?
There is not a time when the search would be called off.
Thank you, Premier. Next, we're going to go to Matthew with the Chronicle Herald.
Hi. I suppose my question would be directed for the Premier and for Erica. What can those displaced by floods expect in the coming days and weeks in the form of support from the provincial government?
So early days. What I would say is, if you look at the situations that we've dealt with in this province, with Fiona for sure, we tried to act as quickly as we can. We came up with some pretty innovative programs there for, spoilage from fridges and for people who were displaced, and then with the fires as well. I mean, working with the municipality and others. I mean, what I would say is we're always going to want to do more. I mean, but we'll certainly do what we can, and we'll assess what the need is, and then we try to respond to the need. In the case of Fiona, there was a lot of food spoilage, and the need was some support around there. We tried to respond to that need. With the floods, the need could be different, but we'll work with Nova Scotians on that and do what we can to support people through this. Right now, I mean, I know there's been an opening question about whether the climate was changing or not, but right now our focus is really on for missing Nova Scotians. Our focus is on making sure that people are in safe situations today, but absolutely in the hours and days and weeks ahead as a provincial government, and I know the municipalities will be right there with us as well. We'll do what we can to support people through this tragedy.
Thank you, Premier. Matthew, do you have a follow-up question?
No.
Okay. We're going to move along to Michael McDonald with the Canadian Press. Go ahead, Michael.
Yes, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Michael.
We can hear you.
Oh, good. Just two quick questions. I'm not sure who to address this to, but I'm wondering if someone would be so kind as to talk about the conditions in West Hants this morning and what first responders were having to deal with. There's a lot of questions, of course, in terms of what happened to those 4 people who went missing from that one particular area. Would anyone like to address that?
Yeah, and then maybe RCMP might want to speak to that, but you can we can all try to imagine. You'd only have to kind of live it to and feel it to really appreciate it. I get that, but I mean, certainly significant rainfall. It's night, it's dark, and scary situations in terms of rescuing people who were in difficult situations. Those rescues would have been extremely emotional, extremely stressful for those responding. But I don't know if RCMP want to add a little further to that.
Thank you, Premier. Certainly. Definitely very challenging terrain, lots of water, lots of fast-moving water and roads being washed out, poor visibility, obviously in the dark, etc. But again, priority is on keeping people safe. So our focus is on the 4 missing persons, as well as helping to rescue any of the people who found themselves in precarious or life-threatening situations. We will be there for you. We are working hard to make sure that people are made safe.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Just a follow-up question. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not sure who to address this to, but do we have a number in terms of evacuations? How many people have had to leave their homes or otherwise, and where those are? Seeing different numbers, and I've been left a little bit confused. I don't know if anyone has had a chance to draw those together yet.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that in Halifax, we know that we had as many as 700 or 750 people who were evacuated overnight. That we are left now with about 150 people. So most of the folks have found an alternate place to go. That was the story in HRM that we know of.
I don't know if maybe the other municipalities want to speak to their specific situations there.
In the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, there's 435 residences that have been ordered mandatory evacuation, but there are also several residences that have taken up shelter within our Lunenburg County Lifestyle Center because of circumstances in their own areas.
Mark Phillips, do you have anything to add there?
Thank you. No, I'd just add that in our area, we kind of had two phases of evacuations, where this morning we had an evacuation in the St. Croix area, where we probably were approaching 50 to 100 households. Thankfully, we were able to stand down on that evacuation. So long as they didn't have personal damage to properties, they were able to return. And now we're working under a more localized evacuation in and around the commercial area of Windsor, probably closer to maybe 24 structures, of which a small percentage would be residential right now.
And
if I could just say one last thing, it's Mike here, Mike Savage. The situation is still in flux. People shouldn't think that this is over. We can hear a rain outside our window where we're making this. Chief Stubing just reminded me that there are some people who've been evacuated just recently as well. So that number changes. Again, people should not assume that everything is over, that this is a very dynamic situation.
Does anyone have numbers from Fancy Lake, finally?
That was the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, and 435 was that number for that evacuation.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to check in and see if Kelly, do you have anything that you wanted to add there?
Thank you, Kalila. We only have a few for our evacuations because ours were campgrounds. So most people had places to go back home to. And then we had probably half a dozen that have an evacuation there in South Maitland right now. That's all we have in East Hants.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we're going to move on to Tim Bousquet with the Halifax Examiner. Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you. I had a question for John Moore, but I guess the minister responsible for emergency services isn't available in a biblical emergency. So I'll ask the Premier instead. We have reports and photos of the abattoir on the Avon River being closed until 5:30 this morning. And now, as a result, the so-called Lake Pisiquid has backed up into the commercial district. My question is, why weren't the gates ordered earlier when we knew this historic rainfall was on the way? And who finally made the order to open the gates?
Thanks for the question. I can tell you that Minister Lohr is he's out on the road surveying damlets, talking with Nova Scotians, which he was desperate to be here to answer your question, but I insisted he be out there with Nova Scotians at this time, so that's where he is. But the situation at the lake, I mean, obviously we're watching that closely. There's some concern over flooding for sure as we approach high tide. High tide, I believe, is 4:54. So working with the local officials there and the provincial officials, they've been monitoring that situation very closely.
Thank you, Premier. Tim, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I guess that didn't really answer the question about when the gates were ordered open. But following on, do you still think that there's that the emergency act should be in place for risk of wildfires?
We'll continue to monitor that situation. Obviously, these things are in flux. I mean, significant rainfall over 24 hours. You have forecasts for rain, and then you have actual rain. So we'll continue to monitor that. But again, what I would say, the decisions that have been taken, I would certainly stand by that. The best time to prepare to fight a fire is before the fire comes. So it is still a situation that we'll continue to monitor. But the filling of the lake. That decision was made, when we were dealing with another crisis and disaster in this province. Of course, those fires. There is a history in the town of Windsor of fires and having to rely on that lake to fight fires. So the decision to have that ready in the case of a need for fires is absolutely the right decision. We'll always put the public safety first. Now we've gone from fires to floods. So as we move from fires to floods, we'll continue to assess.
Thank you, Premier. Next, we're going to Chris O'Neill Yates with CBC National News. Go ahead, Chris.
I'll ask Premier Houston. You just said you've gone from hurricane to fires now to floods. How much stress is this putting on resources of the province, and what will you be requesting from the federal government to help you get through this?
Thank you. I mean, somebody mentioned to me the expression Nova Scotia strong, and we are Nova Scotia strong, but they said, but why do we have to keep proving it? And we've certainly had our fair share in this province. We are a resilient people. There's no question about that. But these events test us for sure. They put significant pressure on our first responders, on our community leaders, those that step up, and certainly with 4 missing people right now, the emotions that those people on the ground are feeling is completely unimaginable. We all feel it. We pray for their safe return. But as we look to what can we do in the midst of it, as we are right now, and what partnerships and support network do we have? I mean, I mentioned the federal government with the Coast Guard deployment this morning with search and rescue support. These things are really important, for a number of obvious reasons, but they're also really important that for our first responders and for Nova Scotians to know that help is there, that support comes. It kind of gives a mental lift at a time it's needed to know that reinforcements are on the way and there. So we're thankful for that. We're thankful for the support that comes from the federal government, but also from the other provinces, our neighboring provinces. I've heard from a number of premiers this morning and through the day that they just say the word, and we'll be there to help, and we'll continue to evaluate that. So, but certainly it's difficult. It's difficult. We ask a lot of our first responders. We ask a lot of Nova Scotians through this time, but they always respond in the most impressive and unimaginable ways to support their friends and neighbors, and I know that's happening right now as well.
And as a follow-up, the Prime Minister just said a little while ago that he's thinking of people in the province, and Minister Blair as well has joined him in saying that they will offer support not just now but in the weeks to come. What would your wish list be right now of support from the federal government?
And I certainly thank them for that, and I do want to acknowledge as well, I've been in constant contact with Minister Fraser. I've also heard from Minister LeBlanc as well. So we'll need their help. I mean, there's I think the early indications, and the damage is still being assessed, but early indications are at least 7 bridges are going to need to be replaced or rebuilt or made safe again. That number will probably go up. The damage to the roads is extensive. Pavement peeled back, roads undermined, shoulders of roads gone. I mean, these things are all going to take time, resources, money for sure. The property, the damage to homes, people's property damage is just it's pretty unimaginable. So the support in the form of people and resources and experts is going to be necessary, and I believe the province has already reached out to the federal government for financial assistance under the disaster financial assistance program. So yeah, the needs are the rebuilding will require significant effort, and that will include money. And it will include resources, and we'll be looking for support, and I believe that support will be there.
Thank you.
Could I speak to that, Koila?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just from a municipal point of view, we've also had good communication with ministers, with Minister Blair, messages from the PMO, directly from Minister LeBlanc. So we will be looking for help. There's no question. We have roads that are gone. We have a lot of work that needs to be done. We have significant damage. And one thing that we could always use is a faster response in terms of cutting a check for us to do some of this work. People might want to remember that 60% of infrastructure in this country is under the purview of municipalities, and we collect about 10% of the taxes. So we appreciate the relationship with the provincial government. The Premier and I spoke earlier this morning and have kept in touch, and with the feds as well. Municipal governments have been asking for a long time for support, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation for the effects of climate change, and we're working with the orders of government to facilitate that. But this is evidence of why it's needed.
Thank you very much. We're now going to go to Sarah Plowman with CTV. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks very much. I think this would be for RCMP, although perhaps the Premier. I'm looking for more details about these two incidents involving people who are unaccounted for. Are you able to share with us, did people leave their cars and were swept away by the water? Were they in a river? I don't know. I'm just looking if you could add more information to where they were. Were the people who are okay, were they rescued? If you could share more information.
Thank you for the question. I'll maybe the RCMP can respond to that.
Thanks for your question. Unfortunately, we can't give more detail than we've already given. It's really out of respect for the families, and also we need to be sure that we're doing everything we can. That's our priority, is to find the missing persons. We don't want to encourage, we don't want to provide location because we don't want to encourage people to go start looking themselves for it because of the dangers involved. So I think that's as much information as we can give as of now.
Sarah, do you have a follow-up question?
I do, unrelated, but there's talk of several dams, that were threatened at a time. And I know there's several across the province, but in the Hants area, the St. Croix Dam, I believe it's called that, or others in this area. Could you share what the status of those are and what's being done at this point?
Maybe Public Works might have a little more information, but I can tell you at a high level, I do know that there's close monitoring of a number of dams, including I think Nova Scotia Power might have referred to at least one of theirs as well. But I know they're being monitored and being opened and closed as necessary and as seen appropriate to try to take the pressure off. But I don't have exact details. But if Public Works does, maybe I'd ask them to come in on that one.
Sure, thank you, Premier. As you alluded to, they are being monitored at a high level. They'll be continuing to keep an eye on those as the weather changes, as the water levels rise and fall. But there's not much more I can add at this point.
Thank you, Mark. We're now going to go to Pat Healy with Laker News. Go ahead, Pat.
Thank you. I think this question is for Kelly from the municipality of East Hants. There's definitely lots of flooding and road washouts here in East Hants, especially Highway 215 in South Maitland. What type of message can you give to the residents in that area who are now cut off because of the washout of Highway 215?
Thanks, Pat. Actually, so Highway 215 is a provincial road. We are coordinating with the province at this time. So perhaps Mark Peachy can actually offer a bit more of an update at this time.
Sure, happy to do so. We have staff out there now. As you alluded, there is extensive damage and our crews will be out there. We're deploying resources from areas that were less hit that can come in and help with the effort as well. And we'll be leaning on our local contractors as well to get this work tidied up as quick as possible.
Thank you. And Pat, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I do. For Premier Houston, what took so long in announcing and putting forward the state of emergency for the communities impacted?
Well, thank you, Pat. And I know, working with the municipalities, I know some of the municipalities have also declared state of emergency. So I think as we kind of assess what we're facing, what people are facing, we assess the need for a state of emergency, and obviously we have declared one. But I think the main outcome, I guess, of a state of emergency is that it gives the government the flexibility to be very responsive in mobilizing resources, moving people around, the calls for help and stuff. All of these things are just a little quicker when you're in a state of emergency. So I think with the work that was happening with, the first responders that were out there, the firefighters that were out there, the law enforcement people that were out there, search and rescue people that were out there, the public works team, the natural resources, a number of people mobilized very quickly and started to feed information in as to what we were facing. And I think the response has been absolutely incredible. I can't thank them enough, considering how quick this happened and that it happened overnight. As the RCMP said, across, visibility is an issue, terrain's an issue. So I think the state of emergency is appropriate at this time. I think the response was quick. Of course, we'll do a debrief, but right now our focus is on, the public safety. Our focus is on finding 4 missing people, and ultimately our focus will turn to rebuilding. Rebuilding the significant damage. But I think the response from Nova Scotians in various capacities to support other Nova Scotians has been, I'm pretty proud of that response that I've seen so far.
Thank you, Premier. And now we have Jesse Thomas with CTV.
Hey, thank you. I guess this might be for the Premier. I'm just wondering, with regards to the state of emergency being called, is it not protocol to send out alerts for that? Just looking for more information on that.
Sorry, Jesse, is it protocol to what?
To issue a state of emergencies. Should we have had alerts for these that we got in? My understanding is a number of alerts have been going out to various areas. I'm not sure if you mean specifically to send an alert to declare the state of emergency. I'm not sure if you mean that or not. But the state of emergency, it's in many ways it's almost a government thing. It's for how we can respond, how we can deploy resources, what actions we can take as are deemed necessary. It's the speed at which you can do things like stay-at-home orders. Would be familiar with those through the pandemic and things like that. But I think the focus is the real focus is on the operations on the ground and keeping people safe, rescuing people, and that focus has been unwavering by as I said, the first responder network, the department folks from public works, from natural resources, and just that response has been swift and fulsome. The follow-up question might be for Mark Peachy. I'm just wondering if you can describe where the most severe damage is, where the most flooding is still occurring, currently in place.
Thanks for the question, Jesse. We're seeing still a fair bit in the Hants County area, as well as along the South Shore, along the 103 between exits 7 and 10, and adjacent on trunk 3 as well.
Thank you, Mark. That does conclude today's availability. If media do have any unanswered questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to the appropriate organization for a response. Thank you.